now we've processed our samples, and I've taken the weight out of this basket. And they're all processed, and this is a dirty basket. Of course, we're going to soak it in the xylene later, as I talked about earlier, or we'll talk about. Anyway, I'm going to remove the samples out of this basket and just putting me in this embedding center. This is a warm little box, and it's got a slide drawer here, and it keeps the samples warm for embedding. Now, if you would use the weight, you just remove the weight and take the samples out of the basket. If you haven't used the weight and you chose to use the gauze method that I showed you about tying them down, like maybe the weights got misplaced or you just chose to do this, you're going to take this gauze is going to be really kind of stiff from the wax or getting close to it. You'll just cut that knot and then remove the samples out by opening up the gauze. You get the idea. And then dump the samples out into the warm basket and throw away that gauze, of course. So, and again, that would be a dirty basket that you're going to have to clean later in the xylene, as I talked about when we were processing and changing the processing reagents. And you can see how I saved I spoke about that earlier, I saved the slide box holders for when I carry the samples in and the basket. Then it just saves you from having a big mess all over the place. Anyway, I'm getting back to this. Let me, while these are warming up slightly, I'm going to go over some of the functions of this embedding center while I have you. This is a SURGIPATH Embedding Center. I have the manual for it right here. There's a couple things about setting up the timers that are kind of fun and really nice about it. In this, you should never have to do this, but under this thing here, I put a little note, but if that ever disappears, there's a little line that goes down. There's a little hex screw hole, a little teeny tiny hole right under here, right there. And the arrow kind of points down to it. And that hex screw hole actually adjusts this paraffin flow from this paddle, they call it here. And you push that paddle and the paraffin comes out. Now if you turn that hex screw hole, you can actually stop that flow or make it even more or whatever. What you need is the tool that I have in this plastic bag here in with the manual. So here's the little tool for that hex screw hole. You should never have to adjust that, but by some odd chance, if you have to, there's the tool and there's the hole that you would need. In the manual, it describes how to set up this paraffin embedding center. This is the cold plate. This is the warm plate. This is the embedding boat holder, and it keeps it warm. This is where you add paraffin when you need to add paraffin to it. Never overflow this. You should never have this filled past 3/4 full. You never want to overflow it to where it's getting paraffin, because it's kind of an open system in that it could actually drip paraffin down into the unit itself where the little motors and different things are and pumps, and you really just don't want that to happen. This is where the timers are set. Now, it's better to have this on at all times because it actually has a battery in here that keeps the clock set for the correct time. So when you want to change it, and the manual will explain that further if you have any confusion, how you want to change it. Let's say I'm here and I want this embedding center to come on at 12 o'clock tomorrow. So I can set this so it says time on. What I do is I push this left thing. It's now in capital letters, but if I push this, it's going to be in small letters, and I can adjust the time by going up or down with these arrows here, and it'll come. That's the time it'll come on. So then I push that, but that's not the full story. Now I want to go to the work day. Let's say I don't want it to come on. I'm going to be gone for a couple days. I don't want it to come on till 7:30 Monday morning. So what I will do here, it says workday, is again I push it until it's small letters and it's got Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. If you highlight an X by each day of the week, that's the days it will come on, and it'll come on at 7:30 on the days of the week that you assign it to. If you don't want it to come on any day, unless you, let's say, you don't want it to automatically come on, you're going to be gone for a week or two on vacation, then just leave all the work days blank. Do not put an X there, and at least it'll keep the machine on until and keep the battery charged, but it won't automatically come on the next morning. If you want it to automatically come on the next morning or the next day at a certain time, select the day, the work day of the week, and select the time on date that you want. Now, these functions will only work when the machine is actually on, when you've depressed this clock button to turn the unit itself on to warming up. And the same goes for here too. You can do the exact same setting. It functions exactly the same way, the cold plate, except again, you have to have the unit on to change any of the parameters. Okay, this unit also has a nice foot pedal that does the same thing as this paraffin releasing paddle. If you push the foot pedal, it releases the paraffin. Now, if the paddle or this foot pedal are released, the paraffin is going to keep continuing to leak into this warming bin. And if for some reason anything malfunction and it's leaking, it's all going to end up into this warming bin here. Well, this is a nice little magnifying glass we have here. I like to try and keep that wiped and clean. It gets gunked up with paraffin now and then. It's surprising how that paraffin just seems to end up everywhere. So once in a while I just give it a little wipe when I see it starting to get something. But it's really nice when you can't see a sample, especially like a derm sample or something, you want to see the epidermis and what's going on with it. It's really nice for orientation to see what's going on. This little square thing here is actually a little bit of a cold plate. That's for chilling the block for orientation. So you don't, when you first get the sample there, you don't want to rest it on there just yet. And I'll show that to you in just a moment. I also have these nice little scrapers I keep on hand when I'm cleaning up and I'm finished. I give everything a little scrape. It doesn't scratch anything because they're plastic. And it's nice to keep your area clean and kind of wipe things up. Paraffin can really build up in a hurry. And I have a larger one if you need it for the floor or a larger area. Okay, let's get started. Now these are oncotypic cultures or epidermal equivalent samples. I never open more than one at a time. And that's kind of a good rule of habit for any samples, is to never open one cassette, more than one cassette at a time. For these I need a small boat. We call these the boats. So I open the sample carefully. And I don't discard this just yet. If you have several samples and you get into this habit, now for ours we have the sponges, so we know our situation. But if you get really tiny biopsies or you get other things, it's better to get in that habit of knowing to not discard this lid right away, because every once in a while, if you have a tiny sample, the sample can get stuck onto the lid. So it's a good habit to get into, to not immediately discard it for future samples and future things that you may come across. The other thing, I put a little bit of paraffin in here, and I leave it resting on the warm. I take my warm forceps and I open this up very carefully, and I see that there it is. And again, I don't discard this sponge just yet, just in case a layer of the sample happens to stick on there and I want to take a look at that. So I set it off to the side. Now my forceps are getting cool, and I see that they're getting cool, and I don't want it to stick to my sample. So I'm going to replace it with a warm forceps. Okay. So now again we have our half circle shape. And the only areas that I can grab this sample are here at the one of the pointed ends. Again, my forceps is getting cool, so I'm going to grab and switch it out and grab another warm forceps. And it just that quickly, you just keep getting in that habit of swapping the forceps. So I'm going to take my sample, and I like to grab it from the end. And I can see that this was the area of interest side. I just know that because I know my samples. And I know the way I place them into the sponge initially. So my area of interest, I always embed the same way in the same direction. So when I go to microtome, I know which is the epidermal end or sample area of interest and which is the back end of this sample. Now I also like to embed these at a slight angle because I know these have a slight plastic disc on the back of them, and that slight angle really helps when cutting across the blade. Now other samples don't need that, but these particular ones do. I got this cold plate here, so I'm going to hold this nice and even. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm holding it nice and even at the bottom, and I'm bringing it over to my cold area and letting it chill. I'm going to hold it up for you. Okay. And my forceps got too cold. They're sticking. You'll have to edit this part out. Well, I'm going to hold it up for you too to see. So you're going to have to edit part of that out. Just because, you know, I don't want them to see me having their specimen stuck to the forceps like that. Okay. I'll hold it up for you to see. So here's the sample, here's the angle. Do it at a very slight angle, nice and evenly. So the specimen is embedded nice and evenly at a slight angle. It was held down so I know it's even on the bottom, all the way, touching from this end to this end is touching evenly on the bottom. I'm going to move it over to this really cold one because I want that paraffin to chill quickly. I'm going to get this on quickly, and I'm going to put a little more paraffin on top. Now you want to move fairly rapidly in this process. I'm trying to go slow for your purposes, but you want to do this fairly rapidly because you don't want to end up with layers of paraffin chilled at different times. So here's our sample. I gently picked it up. I'm going to get it even in this boat first. Nice and even, touching. It's going to get slightly chilled with a layer. Now I know it's stuck there, so I'm going to move it quickly to here because I want it to crystallize quickly, that paraffin. And I'm going to move it back and get paraffin in there and then bring it over to this cold plate to finish its cooling process. I wonder if this would help you, this magnifying glass, seeing it.
No, the problem is that your hands are obliterating what you're seeing. I mean, I know there's no other way around that, but I can't talk about them seeing something, but it's impossible to see it.
I'm trying here, and just not much we can do. Okay, I'm not getting this boat cold at all. I'm keeping it warm temporarily. I got this nice and even on the bottom, resting on the bottom. Now I'm going to chill it. It's at a slight angle. I want to get a quick chill because I want that paraffin to crystallize quickly. I'm going to get this on now and give it its final warming paraffin. Now it's going to complete its chilling process. Let's do that again. Have the nice warm boat. Have the sample. We've got warm forceps. I know my area of interest is on top, and that's the way I placed it in the cassette originally when we processed it. I'm going to put a little bit of paraffin in here. It doesn't matter if you put a little or a lot. I'm going to now get another warm forcep. I only grab it either on the end or one of the corners because my area of interest is in the very center. Again, I'm going to get it in there, resting nicely on the bottom before I chill it. And now the chilling is going to stick it. Oops. There we go. Now you can see it's at a slight angle, nice and chilled and stuck. I'll make sure it's stuck really good and crystallizing quickly. Bring it back, get more paraffin in, and there you go. I chill it quickly on here and crystallize it quickly, and I say that because if you do a slow chill with paraffin, what happens is it crystallizes with big crystals, more like a big snowflake, and then when you go on the water bath, when you're microtoming, what happens is it wants to spread really quickly instead of holding together nicely and giving the support that you want. So if you ever come across that, a block that every other block is fine, but this one is spreading really quickly, that's more than likely the cause that the paraffin originally wasn't chilled quickly enough. Maybe it got paraffin on the bottom of the boat and chilled slowly, had an insulation factor, or maybe you didn't work quickly enough here and it didn't chill quickly. So if you come across that, that's more than likely the problem. Now I see on this particular embedding center, paraffin tends to get on this. Again, I don't like it to get paraffin on the bottom of the boats too much for the very reason I just described. I need it to chill quickly and I don't want that insulation factor, so I'm going to give it a little wipe. Let's do that again. I'm keeping my forceps warm. I have a nice warm boat. I can even put the paraffin in first, just kind of have it waiting for me a little bit. It doesn't matter. I'm opening it up carefully. I save that just in case. It's kind of a good habit to be in. I open this carefully and I save that just to make sure I didn't miss a layer. I know the way I place my sample in with the area of interest is on top. And I embed them the same way every time. It's really helpful to me to set the sample in the same way every time and to pick them up and embed them the same way at the same thing every time. And that helps me when I'm microtoming later on to know where my sample is. So there it's nice and stuck at a very slight angle. And the only reason I do that with derm samples or these particular epidermal equivalents is because the plastic on the back. I'm going to put my cassette top on top, resting nicely, fill it the rest with paraffin, and get it over onto the cold for its final chilling. Now, when these are done, I do not like to use any kind of mold release or anything like that. I feel it's totally unnecessary. When these are done, they'll come out of this block very nicely, very easily. In fact, once in a while you'll hear them kind of crackling, and that's kind of letting you know that they're ready. I would think that these were about ready. If they're ready, they'll easily come out. No problem. They just come right out just as easy as can be. If you have to force them at all, they're not ready, and just don't do it. It's not worth it because you'll end up having to remelt it and re-embed it. And there it is, the finished sample. Let's see if this one's ready. And there it is. It came out very nicely. Now, of course, these are not ready, so they're not going to come out. They're not lifting out. And you don't want to force them because you'll just ruin them. And that one just came out very nicely. Then I put these, I kind of like to put these towards the back to get warmed up again, and that's that. When you're finished with the embedding center, you just give this one push and that turns it off. You give this one push and that turns it off. And I like to put a paper towel in this because it gets a lot of moisture as it's cooling down. So as it's cooling down, I don't want a pool of water, so I put a couple paper towels on that. I wipe everything down, scrape it off. Check to see if it needs a little more paraffin in the top. You can use this big forceps because sometimes it kind of sticks a little. You just kind of lift it up and see if it needs a little more paraffin. And you're done. Another thing about this, you get a little bit of residual paraffin on the edges of the block. Another thing you can do with this is hold the block firmly because you don't want to warm your sample, but you can get that off by putting it on the warm surface here and then quickly remove the paraffin off of there, so when you go to microtome, that way you don't have to scrape it later. You can do it. Just let you melt that paraffin off. There's a little paraffin on the edge. And that's it. One more thing about this embedding center. This workstation here will not allow you to dispense paraffin either by the foot pedal or this paddle until it has reached the complete temperature that you have established in this when you set it up. So until this light comes on and it has reached that temperature, it will not dispense the paraffin. That's probably good for you guys to know.